This is the Picard podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 6, The Bounty.
I know what these changelings are capable of.
We need to leave that to Starfleet.
I am Starfleet.
I need you to be thinking about us.
I grew up listening to your adventures. All the times you and Picard stood up for what was right.
It's a different time.
No, it is you and I that are different. I'm not Alondra. I'm not an engineer like you. You built amazing things, but me, I just wanted to fly them. You took that as me rejecting you, but I always thought it brought us closer together. You would believe in this if you believed in me.
Welcome back, fellow Trekkies, Trekkers, and everything in between. This is TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 6, The Bounty. I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
I am your other host, Derek. Oh,
Yes.
Once again, poor John.
We've lost him in a transporter accident. He is not here. He was due to teleport in, transporter in, and unfortunately, due to some tribbles in the machinery, and it was an attack tribble as well. He is not here for this episode.
Those things look dangerous. I'm glad.
Don't they?
I'm glad it's just transported him to somewhere away, so he'll just take a little longer to get back. That's all that's really happened. No, unfortunately, he's been caught with a little cold, and as you can possibly hear, he's in the process of transferring that cold over to me at the moment. So, I'm not as bad as he is, so at least I can be on the podcast, because this is an episode we both really wanted to talk about. I think all three of us really wanted to talk about. So at least there's two of us here for this one, right, Chris?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I'm going to do a neener moment. I think I was right. Okay. Before we really get into it, off air,
there's going to be spoilers from now on, so make sure you've watched episode 6 of Picard season 3.
Yes. Spoiler alert if you're episode 6 with us. Okay, and you're listening for the first time, go back and listen to all the rest of it, then come back and also watch episode 6. But I will take a quick neener moment before we get into it going, I was right. I said a certain character would come back, even though they have been deceased twice.
Yep.
They're no longer with us. Twice. They are dead. Deceased. No more. They kicked the bucket. All the other Monty Python Dead Parrot references. And they did come back. But Derek was like, no, they're dead. There's not a chance to come. Maybe this other one, but not that person. And I'm like, technically I'm right.
And technically I'm also right, because that exact character hasn't come back. But what I didn't take account of when we had that discussion was Terry Mattos being the showrunner for this season, being the main writer in this season, and his absolute willingness to give the fans every single thing that they want in this season. Doesn't really matter about the fact that we killed off Data in season 1. We'll bring him back in season 3. Why not? Yeah,
no, it literally, Terry Matson is doing Gene Roddenberry's work.
The
level of fan service. No, jokes aside, he is just giving us what I want in, I must say, and I'm spoiler for my views, in masterful ways. Yes. Not like we've seen shows do fan service and nostalgia kind of fishing, essentially. It's like, oh, here's this thing you like, look over here, come on, look at it. And they use it to kind of duct tape over some kind of cracks in the story. Yeah. I haven't seen any cracks yet. I've seen some kind of, not the best way of doing it, but like still good. And they're just giving us what we want in masterful ways, very much saying, do you know what, this is your last Next Generation, hurrah. Here's everything you want and you've asked for over the years.
And so more, yes.
Oh, yes, and very much more. But let's get into it, really, because I think there's a lot to discuss. But first and foremost, don't forget to pop on over to our new minted looking tvpodcastindustries.com, and you can essentially make sure you subscribe to each and every Federation or Romulan supporting podcast player of our little old podcast. You get all the shows there. We're still covering The Bad Batch. We just finished The Last of Us over the HBO show. Some really good shows. So make sure you pop on over to tvpodcastindustries.com and subscribe to each and every single podcast that you like out of our feed. If you have feedback, don't forget you can send those emails to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or head on over to our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where we usually have a spoiler post for each and every episode as it comes out. I'll give a final reminder that the 6th question to our Picard final 10 forward pub quiz will be available later this episode. If you gather together all 10 answers to the pub quiz questions at the end of the season, email them to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and you'll be in with a chance of getting your hands on some Star Trek Picard goodies. Yes, so make sure you listen right to the end of this. Now,
there's some good goodies out there for Star Trek Picard, and because it's the last season and our final go round for our 10 forward pub quiz, we'll make sure there's some good Picard related prizes in there for you.
Yes, but we're also going to make the questions extra hard just to ensure you really want them.
You say that, but I had to put the question in here for this week, and it's not that difficult.
So you're going to get a really easy question
this week.
This is the freebie. This is the freebie one. Okay.
Yes. All you need to do for my one is use your eyes. There you go.
There you go.
So, Chris, let's kick into our coverage of this episode of Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 6, The Bounty. Do you want to tell us who gave us what with the overall details behind the scenes?
Of course, the show was created by Kiva Goldsman and Michael Chabon and Christian Bayer and Alex Kurtzman. This episode's story is by Christopher Monfetti. This is his 2nd episode this season. This episode, Episode 6, was also directed by Dan Liu, who we saw in the last episode because he directed that one too.
Absolutely. What an episode to get to direct, huh?
Oh, telling me. Now, Derek, in lieu of a very fluey John, do you want to tell us what they gave us for this episode with your synopsis?
Absolutely. The Wikipedia synopsis has helped me out. Once again, thank you very much, Wikipedia, for coming in last minute to give us the synopsis. So the synopsis for this episode is: Worf and Raffi board the Titan and together with the crew develop and execute a plan to infiltrate Daystrom Station. The Titan is forced to flee after Starfleet ships arrive. Picard seeks out help from Geordi LaForge, his former chief engineer, now a Commodore in charge of the Starfleet Museum. The away team discovers that a Soong-type android containing the memories of Data, B4, Lal, Lore, and Alton Sung is at the heart of Daystrom and also contains the project's database that they're looking for. Equipped with a Klingon cloaking device stolen by Jack, who is suffering from Picard's old neurological condition, and LaForge's daughters, the crew returns to Daystrom where they recover Raffi and Worf. But Riker stays behind to cover their escape and is captured. They discover that the item stolen by the changelings was the original dead organic body of Jean-Luc Picard. Riker is brought aboard the Shrike, where he is reunited with his wife Deanna Troi, who was also kidnapped by the changelings. They didn't fill in the parts where it's all about nostalgia.
Yeah.
In the synopsis.
I think
they didn't fill in those moments where panning shot of amazing spaceships that we remember from the past with theme tune playing. Love it.
Yeah. Should we jump in to our discussion on this with, I think, our first point, if you want to call it that?
Make it so, number one.
Absolutely, yes. Our small moment, or our little quote from the episode that stood out to us. Lots and lots of options here in this episode, I think.
Yes. So, John, from the transporter accident, he wanted us to talk about Shaw geeking out, because we are geeks. Especially Shaw getting to geek out, or engine out, or grease monkey out with LaForge.
That's such a fun moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Really like this. Shaw has been, let's say, disrespectful to the legends of Starfleet, but as an engineer himself, as he says, having a moment quickly to talk to Geordi LaForge and express how much he respects him and loves him, and gets a great response from Geordi, where he's kind of going, look, I know we're under a lot of pressure right now, at this stage, your ship is being held together by the 21st century equivalent of duct tape, and I would happily geek out with you about that at any other time, but we are busy right now. And you just get a moment from Shaw where he's like, "Oh, that's lovely."
He's like, "Oh, I'm meeting my hero."
Exactly, it's like Phil Coulson meeting Captain America in the Marvel universe. That's always my go-to for proper geek outs on screen.
That is actually one of the better ones. I think that it really is.
Absolutely. Chris, how about yourself? What's your small moment from the episode?
For me, it is Sung, his hologram, talking about the evolution and how evolution is not the act of preservation, it's the act of addition. And we kind of get this interspace with the shots of kind of both Picard and the Forge and obviously their offsprings, and that they like, obviously Picard now just has Jack, and we meet the two LaForges in there, his daughters. So we now met both of them. And you have Sung talking about he originally wanted to kind of live forever, and that's why he created essentially Data and Lore and all the androids and all the work he's done
and
as
the golems,
a way, the golems, as a way to essentially live forever. And actually, and it was that evolution of man to live forever, to live beyond his years and be celebrated beyond his years. And throughout his lifetime, and at the end, he then obviously built a new golem, which we'll get to later, but does talk about how actually it's the act of addition. Like, you're imprinting your knowledge and all your worth on your offspring. It's not always going to be perfect, but it is going to be good.
Exactly. Yeah, great little moment there. Seeing Olden Sung, and of course seeing Brent Spiner in the series. It's interesting. It's almost like they're treating it as if this is the first time we've seen Brent Spiner back in the role. Obviously we've had 2 seasons now where Brent Spiner has appeared in both seasons. So we're not getting the same experience, but they are saying really to a lot of fans that didn't tune in for the last 2 seasons of Picard, don't worry, come on in here. We'll give you a new introduction to the character again, effectively. So
yes, they do.
Yeah. So I see why they're doing it. It makes a lot of sense, and lots of people really happy with this. Of course, seeing Brent Spiner back on here, so a great little moment there. For me, my quote is really from Worf, because his arrival on the Titan, I think, is one of my favorite moments in the episode, because nobody really knows how to deal with Worf. He's quite a serious person. And has been in the past, even though they're all very close and all very family related. I just really like where Picard's saying to him, "Oh, it's been so long, Worf," and he responds with, "It's been 11 years, 5 months, 4 days, minus your infrequent messages and the annual bottle of sour mead." I'm kind of taken aback. Picard's wondering what this sour mead is, and Riker tells him it's Chateau Picard. And Worf, of course, saying it's quite tart, sir. So yes, not a fan of wine, I don't think. I
like it. It's a good way to describe essentially what is wine, and a good Chateau Picard and Pinot Noir.
Yes, if you're a sweet beer drinker,
yes.
Certainly wine would just taste really tart. But for decades now, we've been told that Chateau Picard is an amazing wine. So now,
it's
2
all
people
marketing.
this season.
It's all marketing.
2 people this season now criticising it, from Shaw and now Worf. So love that line, love that moment.
Yes, no, it was a good one. I think it's again showing the comedic elements that we'd get very irregularly across Next Generation, just kind of sprinkled in, and this is another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Should we move on to our medium points for this episode?
Implement the Omega Directive immediately.
Yes, our Omega Directive, our second point. What have we got? Anything coming in from the transporter?
Yes, from the transporter, we do have Moriarty reprising his role from the Next Generation. And as a way to also basically reintroduce potentially Data, or at least through, because the noise and the ravens from the hologram that he kind of leads Riker and all them to is the exact same song that we get flashback to for when Riker first met Data back in Farpoint.
Encounter at Farpoint, the first ever episode of Star Trek Next Generation. Yes, that's a really, really cool idea, isn't it? So yeah, Moriarty would be quite connected with Data in the Next Generation. It's created by Geordi LaForge, or at least the program of Moriarty. Obviously, he wasn't created by Geordi LaForge. I think that would go to the creator of Sherlock Holmes. But
Arthur C. Doyle.
Yes, but this specific version of Moriarty, one that would be quite connected, as I say, to Data in the past. So he's using this as a way to sound out. He's trying to communicate with Riker, trying to communicate with his former crewmates, to get them to kind of unlock the key to get into to see Data. So I really like this idea. Great to see Moriarty back here. A very different character than we saw in the past. I think the last time we saw Moriarty, he was so highly evolved in his brain and his ability to deduce stuff, he'd almost become sentient, or he had become sentient, a sentient hologram. So that was the last time we saw him. But this is just a hologram Moriarty. But another great cameo, though.
Yeah, and it's fun just to have the Pop to Go Weasel kind of reference. And then, like, for me, it was the same actor who played him, and they kind of, I think they gave him a few less wrinkles, so he was closer to how he looked, but he definitely had aged. And I was like, okay. Like, there's some things you just can't change.
Absolutely.
And it was fun. It was, again, the nostalgia beat, but it was one that I went, oh, that's clever.
Yes.
Fun, nice, just kind of tweak, using a clever thing just to kind of get it in there. Yeah,
he's not the dangerous foe trying to take them down. He is effectively a door that needs to be unlocked, and he's sharing the key with them, which is kind of cool. This is all you need to do, solve this riddle effectively. So I kind of like that. That was really good. Nice one, John, I guess. Chris, how about yourself? What's your medium moment from the episode?
So for me, it's that Jack is dying. He has inherited Euromotic syndrome that Jean-Luc Picard had, and it's genetic. It's been passed on, and essentially it's almost like kind of dementia, kind of like their brains move so fast, run so fast, etc., that it kind of just burns out towards the end of their life, and they could be decades, it could be things, but it's what we saw back in season 1 that Picard was dying from, and kind of that thing. But also then it's the same one, if you like, I think we talked about it back when we did the initial conversations on season 1 when this came up. It was obviously that when he went to the future and saw that Q showed him the future of what it could be, you saw the full effect of the illness then as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack has inherited this.
Yeah.
He's seeing, I still don't think that's what he's seeing.
Okay.
Like, I think it's just, it caught it there, but like the hallucinations, the red door, the overgrown ready vines that Jack's seeing, the someone calling to him, because it didn't explain his sudden ability to take out 4 changelings with death shots.
That's true. Did not explain that. Yeah. It may just be that by Beverly investigating, she's now learned about his rheumatic syndrome, but it's not necessarily anything connected to what he's actually seeing as well. Yeah, I agree with you.
And it's nice. It leads in a nice way to kind of connect them further. We get sprinkles throughout this episode of people talking about the things, and even we both Picard and Jack talking, essentially about kind of this symptom, and then you obviously see Jack kind of drinking his way through a bottle. But we have Anik and Seven chatting with Jack and saying, yeah, you sound like him. You have that same poetic insufferability that comes out sometimes. And even towards the end, we see how this, again, is that theme of addition and rather than an evolution, and like what you take from your family, what you take from your mother and father, both genetics and characteristic qualities. It's a nice way. It's like, this is the downside to what we see as well as the positives.
Yes.
His ability to influence and lead and think on his feet and all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I must say I love Jack's line with Picard where he says, I wish you were as good at dispensing genetics as you are advice.
Yes.
And that's a real cutting remark. It is really weird though, isn't it? It feels like you could kind of sit him down for about 2.5 seconds and explain, yes, okay, you've got aromatic syndrome. There are dangers here, but your father is over 80 years old and had this illness.
Yeah.
Whereas they kind of take age out of it completely. They say, it could last decades, right? I get that. But they take age out of it completely and kind of go, he didn't survive aromatic syndrome. He did die of it. Picard did die of it. And the only way he overcame it is by getting a new body and becoming who he is. So effectively, they've just kind of said, there's no cure for this and you're going to die of it, Jack. It could be a couple of decades. But you're talking, it could be 60 more years for Jack. That's a long time to live. Most of us would expect to die within 80 years.
Yeah. And also, your dad got built a new body.
He did.
He still knows where this planet is with all the specialized androids.
No, he doesn't, Chris. Put the connection there. In this episode, Alton Sung had the only other golem. There's only 2 golems, one built that he gave to Picard and the second one that he's now given to Data in this episode. So there's no other chance for Jack. There was no other one built. That's the reference that Alton Sung died before being able to transfer completely Data into this new golem. So actually, unfortunately, Jack doesn't have the option of his father. But does that matter? Would you expect to live more than 80 years is the question.
Sure. I suppose, well, in a
it's
world
like, oh my
of Star
God,
Trek,
I'm going to die someday. Yes, everybody does.
Yes.
Sorry.
Well, in a world of Star Trek where people actively live quite old because of what the world and the science fiction of it all.
Advancements in technology, yes.
Yes,
yeah.
that's probably the better way of putting it. But anyway, that was my kind of medium point for this, which is how the addition of the disease brings in all these additional kind of conversations that are characteristics and kind of what you take from your family. And it's fun as it's spread out through the whole episode.
Yeah, excellent. And another part of the episode playing into these family connections. This is, way more than Fast and Furious. This show is all about family. And you're seeing that throughout. There's some really, really good moments in there about that. So, good connection there with Jack having something else from his father.
Yes, no, definitely. What about yourself, Derek? What was your medium point?
We got to talk about it sometime. I don't know how to bring it up. There were so many Easter eggs in this episode that I absolutely loved, and I'm sure you have loads as well, Chris. Let's talk about some of the main ones, because this is going to be, I guess, a medium point to talk about. The visit that we have to the Fleet Museum brings up loads of really fun ones, and also on Daystrom.
Yes. So where do we start? Should we start in the ship museum?
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the best Easter eggs that are in there. So first off, the first ship that we see on there is the Defiant, which was commanded by Worf. That was his ship, really, when he was part of DS9. Captain Sisko kind of sent Worf out on all of his missions in the Defiant. So that was a very, very important ship in there. Loved seeing that again. It was kind of cool to see that up on screen. We have the wonderful, of course, NCC 17018, the Enterprise, Kirk's Enterprise, the only surviving one from that era of Kirk's Star Trek, I guess. So, love
retro, as Jack says, the retro lines.
Absolutely. Jack, a big fan of spaceships here. So I liked having that moment between Seven and him as they describe what's going on. And then we alight on one of my favorite ships of all time. Of course, the USS Voyager, where Seven came from. And again, another hitting of this idea of the family, the crew, our family, for all of these people that we've spent so much time with. But having, the pan across the USS Voyager, that amazing theme from Voyager playing as Seven is saying, that's where she was reborn. That's where she came back to being alive from being a member of the Borg and had her family with her. And ever since, she's been trying to find new family. I thought that was a lovely moment between the two of them there.
And we do have the bounty as well.
Of course.
And that's such a beautiful, obviously it plays in later as well. Yeah. But it was so fun to see that.
The name of the episode, of course. Yeah. As well.
No, that they were fun. They're some of the most iconic ships out there. And again, if you're on Twitter, do go follow Terry because he talks about a lot of this stuff. He's very open about, like, yeah, I really wanted this one in here and this type of shot, and every now and again they show kind of some concepts, kind of when they were thinking it through, some concept art or some like all of these. And he talks about, well, I wanted a Constitution class with these types of things. Like, it's very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? And I suppose the other thing is, this is supposed to be a museum in this world, so they can't recreate a ship that's been completely destroyed in the past. Of course, that's why we have none of the Next Generation's Enterprises there, for example. So none
they
of those
always destroyed them.
All crashed. We're hopefully going to get an Enterprise by the end of the season, but we still haven't gotten one of the Next Generation Enterprises. But at least we got the 1701A. That was very cool.
Yes.
But yeah, you're right. Totally cool seeing the Klingon bird of prey. That's such a big ship. We've said this before, despite all of our love for Star Trek. Star Trek: The Voyage Home, which is the fourth movie, is the most popular Star Trek movie. So most people that would have seen one instance of Star Trek would have seen that ship, weirdly. Would have seen the Klingon bird of prey from that movie. So very smart to put that up on screen there. So good stuff. Let's pop on over to Daystrom then, because there's loads of cool Easter eggs in the background of Daystrom. You go first. What's your favourite? I can't pick a favourite, but there's two that are really well connected together from the wonderful era of James T. Kirk. The body of Captain James T. Kirk is in storage here, which is interesting considering what the reveal of what was stolen from Daystrom Institute is another captain's body. So, what were Section 31 doing, going around collecting the bodies of all the famous dead captains in Starfleet? Is that where they go? Don't want to know. You really don't. You never want to know what's behind Section 31. But the other one I loved, really quick one, that you might miss, the first thing they come across is the Genesis 2 device. So this is the device that kicked it all off in the Wrath of Khan. It's a device that exactly. It's a device that was used by James T. Kirk's former girlfriend and his son when it was revealed that he had a son. So a little extra connection there for that Genesis device for this episode. Another reason why you'd have that in here. So very cool to see that stuff. Anything else in there, Chris, that we need to highlight? We mentioned the attack tribble, but I will bring it in really just quickly because it's the genetically engineered attack tribble that, like, obviously fun because tribbles are always there. But also, Worf has such a disdain for Klingons, have a disdain for them, and Worf in particular. What was it? Trials and Tribulations or Tribulations? Yes. From those DS9 when that whole one. Yep, where they went back in the past to Star Trek, the original series. Very cool episode. Absolutely love that episode. But yes, Klingons have a specific aversion to tribbles in their cute form, and now they've been turned into basically face huggers from Aliens. I can imagine how much scarier they are as well. Yeah, no, and it was fun. And I'm pretty sure there has to be way more. Like we saw both like old Klingon birds of prey and Romulans. Like we saw multiple different ships. So I'm sure we're missing a load of Easter eggs. So do let us know if your favourite Easter egg that we haven't discussed yet already came up. Let us know on our feedback and we'll chat about it next week. Absolutely. Do you know how much attention I was paying to these scenes, Chris? I was Googling all the things that I was seeing on screen, making sure I had everything covered. And then a ship went past. I took down the code, the numeric code that's on the front of it, and Googled it, and it was the USS Titan, the ship that we've been following all season. Like, oh, okay, yeah. I probably should have remembered the code on the top of that ship. Excellent. There you go. Due diligence. That's what I say. Exactly. That's all it was. You're just crossing your T's, dotting your I's. Exactly. And your capital T's too with Titan. So we move on to our main discussion points for this episode.
We must face the ramifications of the Prime Directive.
Yes, our main point, our Prime Directive. Do you want to kick us off, Derek? Because we've none real... I don't want to give away too much of what John's thoughts were, so we'll start with just you. Okay, no problem. The return of Geordi LaForge. I mentioned, obviously having the family back together with Worf's arrival and getting his big hug from Beverly Crusher. Lovely moment that we have there. But we have a little bit more of an antagonistic moment from Commodore Geordi LaForge, where Picard thinks to reach out to Geordi to get help from him to solve their situation. Of course he's going to help. He's, the best engineer in the galaxy. He's going to help out his old captain. And instantly when they arrive, he tells them to drop their shields, drop all weapons, and stand down effectively. So I like the antagonistic start to this, and then he arrives on board with his other daughter, who are both in charge of Starfleet. But there's a certain economy to the way that they've written Geordi that you already feel like him the minute he comes on board. You already feel it's the fully formed Geordi LaForge that we last met back in The Next Generation, or in the movies, effectively. I thought he was so well brought to life again here. Yeah. Loved, the idea that he's saying the reason why he needs Picard out of there quickly is because he needs to put in and file complaints for what the fleet are doing for Frontier Day, bringing the entire fleet together. It's a terrible idea. And if he doesn't tell all the right people about it, nothing will change. He's really taken up by this idea. But the fact that he's seen through the conspiracy, that is a Geordi LaForge thing. He's still, even though he's in charge of a museum, he's still investigating. He's still looking at everything that's going on and trying to help and trying to tell everybody the best way to do what they do. So yeah, loved that moment with Geordi. That was cool.
No, absolutely loved it.
One apology I do want to make. I think early on in the season, for some reason, we I think because of all the previews for the season, I'd said that the actress that plays Sydney LaForge aboard the ship is LeVar Burton's daughter. She's not. His actual daughter is the lady who plays Alandra, his daughter here.
Mika Burton.
Yes. So for some reason, I'd said that it was the actress who plays
probably
Sydney.
Me, because I had also said it, and I was like, we had commented because she is a big D&D player. I'm a big D&D watcher.
Right.
She's been on Critical Role. Additionally, she's a bigger question. She's a cosplayer.
Right.
Her dad's nerd royalty being LeVar Burton. Mm-hmm. So, of course, she is nerdy too. So she's in the nerdy space ecosystem, especially out of LA. So she's been in many things.
Right.
But yes, I had mentioned it multiple times to you. So place the blame on me.
And it just takes away, I guess, a little bit of the specialness of having the two of them on screen together and the two of them arriving on board together, having Geordi LaForge back in Star Trek with his actual daughter with him. Yeah. But I think it's great. I love the economy of the character, how quickly he gets up to speed with everything. We see him taking Picard to the side and having a conversation, and it just cuts to him learning about Jack, that Jack is Picard's son. And Geordi goes, "Oh, trust you to make an entire galactic incident out of this, Picard." Absolutely loved it. Really good. But he's very different in some ways than we've seen Geordi in the past, though, as well, which I like. This idea that he now has his own family. He has his own daughters, his own wife to take care of. Those are now the most important things in his entire life. In the past, he would have jumped at the chance to join every single adventure. He was such a central part of that crew of The Next Generation that he would have given up anything. But now he has his own life and he wants to make sure that those people are kept safe. So I like that sparring almost between himself and Sydney, where Sydney's telling him, I joined Starfleet because of you and your adventures. I was never going to be an engineer like you, but at least I could have the family that you always told me you got from The Next Generation, effectively from your adventures that you had. I love that. I thought that was a really good addition to this. It elevates the appearance of Geordi LaForge from a cameo of a former cast member saying hi and giving them the next piece for their mission to an actual good arc and good story, similar to what we said about having Ensign Rowe back last week. It wasn't just a cameo for cameo's sake. It really adds to the story and really gives reason and meaning for having the character here.
Yeah. And again, you really expect him, when we see the engineering problem they're having with the cloaking device, you expect him to come in and fix it. That's the expectation. That's not how it happens. We do see him take control with Data. Mm-hmm. And kind of the spanner and the kind of the sonic spanner or sonic screwdriver. I don't know. The sonic screwdriver.
That's Doctor
Who. I know. But he asked for a buzzy thing.
Right.
But we do get that nice moment as well with the daughters, and you can even see the other daughter kind of smile when basically she talks about saying how she used to crash her speeder on purpose so they could spend time together.
Exactly.
Kind of fixing them. It's it's nice to see the dynamic. Geordie is super strict. Like, and to where he's Commodore LaForge. Like, he is, but he's in charge of a museum. And I'm like, the expectation I always had for him was like like some tech engineering, basically like almost Daystrom, like being the Commodore of Daystrom's almost type thing. That's where I always assumed that character would go based on his engineering prowess.
And it's likely that he did. You know, it's likely that he had lots more adventures. Again, remember, it's hard to remember because these the actors themselves are quite vibrant, given given their age, no offense, but like you think of LeVar Burton being in his 70s, that means he would have had quite a long career after his time in The Next Generation. Same again, Michael Dorn, I cannot believe he's in his 70s, given the scenes that he's had this season so far, fighting with Raffi, those moments that he's had. Again, an actor in his 70s, so... Yeah.
Well, I suppose, like, Hollywood 70s is really, is like real life 50s.
But this is TV 70s, Chris. This isn't Hollywood 70s. These are TV actors from the 80s,
Paramount Plus money. It's not Marvel money, but it's Paramount Plus money. They can still get you some good trainers.
They look great. They're doing such a great job here. And I suppose the line that's so specific from him and from Geordie LaForge to Picard, where he's saying it's always about life and death. That's why I'm not going to join your adventure this time, because every time you have something, it's about life and death. I've done that. I've been there. I have family. I need to protect them. I need to stay out of this. So, he has had all of those adventures many, many times before, and now he feels he needs to pass it on. Yeah.
And the best part about that is it's also your family is not the family you make or you're born into. It's also the family you choose. That whole theme coming throughout the episode.
That is absolutely what he would have been saying in the past. Now he's saying it is the family I choose. I have my kids. But by the end of the episode, of course, he's come around to this idea, learning from his daughter there, Sydney. One of the things I absolutely love about this, as this has all come together, there's always been a little bit of a joke of the idea of the next generation, that generationally they're not connected to the original Star Trek, right? There's no actual generational connection. It's just the new version of the show, right? But they chose the title Next Generation. Whereas here, what we're getting potentially by the end of this season, we have Jack, the next generation of Picard and Beverly Crusher, and we have Sydney, the next generation of Geordie LaForge, potentially could be going on to form maybe a new season, maybe a new show. So will it be Star Trek, the real Next Generation coming up in the future?
It's like the real Ghostbusters.
Exactly.
Yes, so the rumor is that's out there now is Star Trek Legacy.
Yes.
It's out there. There's people are making fan art already, and it's going to be about the Titan and all of them on the Titan, and essentially Jack takes the role of the non-Starfleet, like 7 of 9, but you have all the other Star Trek, like the actual Starfleet people in there, and you have the Forges and everything, and I'm like, yeah, I'm down for that.
Of course.
Like a Titan. Oh yeah, and again I've talked about it throughout the season.
Yeah, we
have a future looking Star Trek show, which will come to an end, but it's still there. You have the past in Strange New Worlds, so we do need a current universe one, a current timeline, present for the Star Trek universe, if you understand my meaning, or somewhat present.
One within this timeline, yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and as long as Captain Shaw's in there, I'm all go for it. But it is funny, isn't it, that it tends to be when you're watching these shows along with Twitter responses to them, it's always, if a character does something good, they need a spin-off. Give them a spin-off show. It's what happens all the time. What made me laugh most this week was when we had this visit to the Easter Egg Museum, the Fleet Museum. I started seeing calls coming up on Twitter for, give the Fleet Museum its own show. All we want to see is great ships from the past with the music playing and someone telling you what they did and what their adventures were for an hour every week. Well, that doesn't sound like a greatest of shows.
That's basically a museum visit, and I'm not sure I could get like 10 hours out of that.
That's basically a Blu-ray extra for this season, is what it is. But there you go.
The one I've yet to see is a Star Trek comedy, and a real life action. I'm not meaning Lower Decks. Sorry, excuse me. I'm very quickly getting in there.
Absolutely, do not.
Lower Decks is great.
Yes,
I love it to bits.
Yeah, we don't have to have a live action comedy. We've got an in-universe Star Trek comedy, which happens to be Lower Decks, and it's excellent.
Yes. Now, to finish, I would love an Office style one, like The Office or like Night at the Museum, where it's actually in the museum, and it's just a fun. They get into little hijinks in the museum every week. Could be stupid, could be funny, could be a mini series.
Could be cancelled after one episode.
Yes, probably.
Or at ideation stage, as they say, Chris.
Who knows? But if anyone from Star Trek's listening, call me. Excellent.
Chris, what's your big moment, your prime directive from this episode?
Yes. For me, it's what was heisted and then what's next. So we can kind of take both of these. But initially, we end this episode finding out Jean-Luc Picard. Yes, we understand that. No, Jean-Luc Picard was heisted. The body of Picard was the piece. And I'm like, this both intrigues the hell out of me, but also makes me very worried. And I'll get to the why in a second. Okay. And then we also do see it ends with Riker captured and Deanna Troi captured by our shapeshifters, our gooey friends. So they're both there. And is that Deanna actually Deanna? Is it a gooey person? Who knows? But also, more problematically, there's only 10 episodes in this season. Okay. It doesn't feel like we're past the halfway point in the story. Like, for me, it doesn't feel like we're that far in. We essentially come into Act 3. This doesn't feel like the beginning of Act 3 or the end of Act 2. Okay. This feels mid-Act 2 almost. So it just feels that part of it. So I'll start with Picard.
Okay. Yes. Let's go back to
Let's
Picard.
Bring all the way back to Picard. Yeah. So Picard's body, as we joked about, both Kirk's body and Picard's body was in Daystrom. And it's been stolen. Yes. We have found a long-lost son of Picard. Yeah. Are they doing the same storyline? I don't think they'd be that silly to have that that Jack is a clone. Yeah. Beverly's whole mind's been messed with, or Picard's body was used to
Then they went back in time and impregnated Beverly Crusher to have Jack. No, there's a much more simple explanation that I finally came up with after watching the episode a couple of times. Okay. So the big moment that we're waiting for in the show that we've heard about multiple times is Frontier Day. Yes. Yeah, coming up in just a few days' time, right?
48 hours, according to...
Yeah. So what we heard in the first episode of the show was that both Riker and Picard are supposed to speak at Frontier Day. The entire fleet's going to be there. So it's possible that they've taken Picard's body so that they can create these versions of changelings that now have the internal organs, so they can bypass all of the security that is afforded to Admiral Picard, so they can get in there and make this big statement from the changelings. That's my thinking.
But they don't need the body to do that, because if you remember what they did with Ensign LaForge, or Pilot LaForge, they didn't need her body to do that.
That's true.
That was, I thought the exact same thing. And it was literally because I was like, oh, okay, they're basically trying to get rid of the scanners, use the real DNA. And then I went, oh no, that's not what they're doing. Or they say that it doesn't compute unless it is, and it's like they go over the skeleton.
You have literally hit on the big difference there between the two things. So with LaForge, they created the internal organs with zero DNA. We hear Dr. Crusher talking about cutting in, seeing blood with no DNA connected to it. Yet this would be a much more real version of Picard if they reanimated the body in some way, or if they really were able to even more detail create a version of him from a changeling. So that's what I was thinking of. I think that's the way that you align it with the story, rather than having to go back and, as I said, do something like they time traveled back to create Jack from DNA stolen from the body of Picard a couple of days ago. I don't know. I don't think that they would go that far with the story. That it has to connect into Frontier Day. There has to be a reason why we heard in episode 1 that Picard and Riker were supposed to be big special guests for this massive moment, that the entire fleet was going to be gathered. So that's the only thing I could think of. That was the only theory I could think of, that's the reason why they need his body.
That means we may lose Riker.
Yeah.
Yeah. With that theory, then they have to kill Riker. Again, to take his body the same way they needed the body of Picard. Anyway, I suppose, look, for me, it just I was like very fearful of this whole body piece, because I was like, again, so far, the writers and everyone on the show have not disappointed. So again, I'm not like throwing my hands in the air and kind of flipping a table and going, oh my God, I'm out. No.
Yeah.
Like, it's very much, I was just like, it's interesting, because
it is.
It wasn't what I was, it wasn't what I was expecting, which is a good thing. But it was also not in a smoking gun. It didn't feel like a smoking gun.
Right.
And I think that's probably it. And I want to see where it goes.
Yes, I was going to say I was excited. I was really happy with the reveal of what they took, and completely confused as to where and what's going to happen. So that's why I've been thinking about it, which is what you're supposed to do. That's why it's a cliffhanger. Why do they want his body? What's that for? How did they get it is the other question. But anyway, we'll gloss over that. The body must have been left somewhere. So they've been digging up bodies all across the galaxy, like James T. Kirk's body. So I guess that's what they do. Once you enter Starfleet, you get chipped with something that, when your body's left on other planets, Section 31, go out and pick it up and bring it back to Daystrom.
Just in case of this.
Yeah.
It does also kind of look, we lost one member with Riker getting caught with potentially Diana or Goo Diana. We don't know.
Okay, so you asked that question. I'm going to say, I believe 100% that's real Deanna Troi. Do you know why? Because nobody delivers that line that she delivered at the end of the episode. Just 2 words of, oh, Will. Nobody can deliver that. If they're a changeling impersonating Deanna Troi, you know that's real Deanna, because nobody can deliver that put down to your husband and slight concern to your husband of, oh, what have you gotten us into now?
Yeah, no, it is her. Like, we know it is, because also they talk about how they're going to kind of round up people connected to Picard.
Yeah.
So,
I thought that was a bit of a weird one. Like, specifically, Vadic says, let's go out, burn down the entire galaxy of everybody connected to Picard, yet who she happens to have captured and brought aboard is Will Riker's wife.
I think they were going for anyone on the Enterprise. So basically, they have a whole of people.
It's like, I have this cast photo from 1988.
Yeah.
7 of these people are aboard the Titan. Who is not aboard the Titan? Who can we get? Yeah.
So look, that's interesting. And with that loss, we also gain a Data.
Yes, we do.
Or a B and a Soon, all in one body.
That was really interesting. Yeah, no, we haven't talked about that. Probably we're going kind of into notes here, right? Because we don't have a point about Data, but it was really interesting. This is the makeup of every single version of Data and that android family that we've seen in the past. We even get a mention of Lal, who was the daughter of Data. So being involved in the makeup of this new character. I'm going to say the character's called Moore. Because of that line saying, I'm not Data, I am more. I think that name's going to stick.
Yeah, that could be a good one.
There you go. It's 4 letters. That's and it ends with an E, like Lore. Rhymes with Lore. So yeah. Anyway, this is really cool. I liked hearing each of the voices. Brent Spiner doing each of the voices of each of the characters. As he's talking through, I am Lore, I am B4, I'm Data. I am more. I thought that was really cool. And Alvin's son, of course. Sorry. Yeah.
Look, it was good. So again, it kind of we have majority of the cast now throughout this episode or throughout this season. Now everyone's come in and gone, and essentially we will, once Riker and Deanna escape, which inevitably they will, fingers crossed, they'll end up back with the Enterprise crew, and that's your whole crew back together.
Yes.
All that has to happen in 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Not hard, but again, it just feels right now. It doesn't feel like the end of Act 2. Again, for me, still feels like maybe like just coming up to the halfway point, because you've got basically. I just feel that's where it feels like for me. I feel like they have enough story and momentum to go not just for 10 episodes. This could feel like a 12-episode season. Like
it could go for 7 seasons like it did before, Chris.
Or a 23 episode.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, it's because of the cast. It's because of getting them together like this. I think they have done a really good job of, when they do bring in a new member of, or a former member of cast or a new member of cast, giving them an arc within the episode that they get. So I presume next episode is going to be the arc of Data. In some way, this new version of Data will get a lot more information about him. But really, there's one big central thing: this uprising of the Changelings focused on Frontier Day, and I think there's ample time, for me anyway, that they're going to be able to deal with that story by the end of the season. See who remains alive by the end of season 3, the final season of Picard. And anybody else who's alive may go into a spin-off in the future.
Exactly. So, with all that said and done, is there any final notes? I have none.
The only one I wanted to call out was just right at the start of the episode. It's actually the opening of the episode where we see Vadic and her shipmates. I really liked her presenting what happened to the Changelings, from their point of view, you know. I think Shaw actually explains it quite well when we hear Worf talking about what really happened in the Dominion War, the fact that they created a virus that would kill all of the Changelings, and then Starfleet created a cure for it, gave it to the Changelings in exchange for peace, effectively. And Shaw says, not before you created some zealots. And in the opening scene, you hear Vadic talking to her crewmates about the fact that they are the zealots. They're the ones that have to wear the skins of their enemies. They have to impersonate Starfleet all across the galaxy. So I think that's quite interesting. But she also calls out the reason other members of the ship don't look the same as her and aren't out in society, aren't out in Starfleet, is she calls them out as ill-defined and misshapen, which makes it sound like presumably they can't take the full form of other people. They can't change the way that the other members of the Changelings can. So I thought that was quite interesting. So they're now the crew of her ship, effectively. So not able to infiltrate. Yet she can. She is a Changeling who is able to impersonate a security officer on the Daystrom station to capture Riker. So she has that ability. The rest of them don't. So there's almost a little bit of classism there between her and the rest of the ship, but she does call them all comrades, I suppose.
Yeah.
But,
and I think it could be a side effect.
Yeah.
Of this piece.
Of the virus,
like the virus now, there's this whole host of people who became misshapen and ill-defined who can no longer take a form, if you will, but can click, sound like an insect.
Yes.
Gurgle, I should say.
Very good. Very good. Almost reminded me of clickers there from The Last of Us, Chris.
Yes.
Good stuff. I think that's it for my notes for the episode.
Yes, that's all from me. So, then I will ask Derek, what did you think of Star Trek Picard Episode 6, The Bounty? Final thoughts.
Absolutely love this episode. It's getting better every episode. You know, I think I was at a 5 out of 5 by episode 3 of this season, and it's just maintained that quality. The writing's been fantastic, the direction's been fantastic, and I love this idea of bringing in a former character and giving them their own arc within the episode, justifying why we're having cameos from all of these people, not just let's get the band back together. It's let's catch up with them and find out who they are now and how they react and interact with this group now. So really, really good. I'm delighted that we're getting a great season of Star Trek Picard so far. How about yourself, Chris?
Same. I have yet to find like many or like enough problems that kind of make me go, meh. I could not watch this episode and kind of like call in sick to the podcast.
Hey, are you saying that's what John did?
I'm not going to say anything. It was just pure coincidence.
He loved this episode. I want to reassure everybody. He was like a 10 out of 5 for this episode.
No. Jokes aside, like it's. I suppose, look, with every element of nostalgia giving and kind of all this, you run the risk of just kind of fan service, but for the sake of fan service. The writers and creators of this season have constantly gone above and beyond and are threading it through with a narrative that is driving me forward, driving the viewership forward. We're not getting many viewership numbers out of the team who run this, but enough to say that they're happy. Everyone seems happy with this. No one's gone like this has been a flop or anything. And it's great to see because it's driving me into, I can't wait for next Thursday and Friday to kind of watch this twice and really kind of get into the next few weeks. So yeah, I'm absolutely still loving it, and getting Data back and being vindicated against Derek is always fun too. So yeah,
we're both right, Chris. We're both right.
We're both right. Very true.
Do you know what? I think we should cheers to that. Let's go to 10 forward, Chris.
Exactly. Now that's a segue.
9 years, Chris. 9 years.
Yep. So, our 10 forward pub quiz for this episode. Question 6. What is the designation number of the USS New Jersey found at the Fleet Museum?
Excellent. Yes, I told you just needed to use your eyes to get the answer to this question. Just a quick moment. All you need to do is just hang around at the Fleet Museum and you should get the answer pretty easy. Chris, do you want to give the question one more time?
Yes. Once again, what is the designation number of the USS New Jersey found at the Fleet Museum?
Excellent stuff. All the other questions are available on tvpodcastindustries.com. A little button there on the top of the main screen saying pub quizzes. Click that and you'll get a list of all of the questions so far for the Star Trek Picard quiz. At the end of the season, gather together all 10 answers to the pub quiz. Email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com to be in the chance of getting your hands on some Star Trek Picard goodies.
Great stuff. So, now that we've done the pub quiz, let's head on over and get some feedback. Yes, don't forget, you can send your thoughts on this episode and any of the episodes in the Picard season to feedback@tvpodcastindustries, or you can join us at our group over on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. First up, we do have some feedback on last week's episode from Joe Herbers, who had this to say. We finally got a chance to watch this episode. One problem with stories generally where someone is replaced is that it's not that easy to step into someone's life. A gripe I had to set aside with Travelers. Seems like it would be hard for changeling to impersonate people generally, because what experience do they have with acting human? Casual conversations would be difficult, maybe they somehow overcame that, but impersonating an individual that's known to others would be very hard. And it should be easy for someone who knows the person well to ask them details on any conversation or personal event. Picard and Rose should have been able to quickly verify that they were each not changelings, though I understand why, for story reasons, they made it harder. Maybe Picard wouldn't have thought of this, but Rose has been dealing with this for a long time. Look at her assemblage of clues and such from the drive she gives him. So she should have been ready to immediately ask him specific questions to verify his identity. If they wanted to go this route with lots of fakes infiltrating Starfleet, then the conspiracy worms would have been a better choice, or perhaps take the thing to the Federation. Great stuff, Joe. Yeah, no, I suppose, look, it's story reasons, but also, like, these guys are good at probably impersonating in the small chat and the casual conversations, and, hey, look, if someone has a memory like mine, even sometimes, I'm like, if someone came to me, remember this conversation we had last week? I'm like, sure. Not changing.
I have to say I disagree with this theory from Joe quite heavily. I think the show is set up quite well here that this is a changeling conspiracy inside. It's not just about finding changelings. It's about finding them and making sure they don't know that you found them and you're not onto them. That's why Ro was being so careful. But the idea here is bringing in Ro as a character after 30 years of being away and her meeting up with Picard, who didn't trust her at all the last time he met her. She left Starfleet to go off and join the Maquis. I know Joe knows this. Joe's a big fan of Star Trek. But the idea here is much more about using this sci-fi thing of changelings to look at these two characters who can't possibly trust each other, so they can get to a point where they can trust each other and say, okay, you're not a changeling. If Ro had accused Picard of being a changeling, then, and he was, then potentially she could have died right there. And that's the end of her investigation, right? So it's really important that there's this distrust between the two. They did actually address it from Shaw earlier on in the season, where he said, it's really easy to tell a changeling. You just ask them a question that they should know the answer to. But because he doesn't know every single person on board his ship intimately, there's 500 people there, there's enough information that they could still impersonate some questions. I understand what you feel about maybe Ro and Picard, because we're fans of the show. We feel they know each other really well, but they didn't spend a huge amount of time together, and it was 30 years ago. So you could mistakenly think someone is a changeling because they don't remember something correctly, as you said, Chris, or because so they're very different than they were 30 years ago. So I think for the show here, the idea that these two characters who distrust each other are trying to figure out surreptitiously whether the other is a changeling makes a lot of sense. And I loved how it worked in the episode, personally. I thought it was a really good idea. But again, we've only heard from Ro's investigation that there are people infiltrating. We don't know who they are. We don't know what positions they're in. And we don't know how many other people are surrounding them in positions to keep them safe or to keep them hidden. We don't know that kind of information yet, but I'm suspecting that stuff is what we're going to see as the season goes on.
I agree. We know this, like you said, it's a conspiracy. So they've been going and doing this for potentially years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's going to be
avoid casual conversations. That's all you need to do. I know lots of people like that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, Joe. Over on Twitter about this episode, Matt Murdoch says, this was a good episode. I kind of wish they avoided some of the campy dialogue, mostly near the beginning of the episode, but some of those nods and payoffs, like Seven and Voyager, Geordi, Data, and finally Deanna in the Flesh, were really, really great. Excellent stuff. Glad you enjoyed it, Matt.
Yeah, good stuff. And yeah, I didn't catch the campy. I think it was just them trying to be a bit too, bringing in that poetic kind of Picard kind of story bits. But
yeah, I was trying to think about this. Yeah, the first scene is Vadic, right? And then the second scene is Worf arriving. So I guess he didn't like the Shut Up Picard joke. I love that joke. Good stuff. Thanks, Matt. Back over on Facebook, on this week's episode, Victor Von Doom says, welcome to Easter Egg and Callback Central. Oh, the episode was awesome. I found myself frequently pausing the video in vain effort to catch all the goodies. When the Defiant appeared, I immediately thought of Benjamin Sisko. Come on, prophets, turn him loose. Vadic is scary in her own right, but what or who does she fear? The Seven and Raffi reunion, a bit confusing. Are they still a couple? Nice to see Shaw humbled upon meeting Geordi. The theft of the cloaking device was great. The sisters fell right in with Jack's plan. Good thing the LaForge family was on board. I must say I love these episodic cliffhangers. Question or two. Are the changelings trying to clone Picard and turn him into some type of Locutus? Where is the Jurati Borg Collective who promised to protect the Alpha Quadrant? Okay, back to cataloguing the third rewatch. Good stuff. I'm sure you're probably on your fifth or sixth rewatch at this stage, Victor. Just to mention, the Jurati Borg Collective, Terry Matalas has said they're not going to appear in the this season at all. That is their job. They're out protecting the Alpha Quadrant, so they're out on the outer reaches. They're not going to be coming back in here. So, unfortunately, we're not going to see Jurati back. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the warriors on the wall.
Exactly.
Which is a shame, because it was the way it ended in season 2 made it seem like it was going to be a big part of season 3.
I don't know, and I can see the justification. They said this is how the Borg ends, with Jurati in charge. They're the Watchers on the wall, and that's it. That's the end of your story. So, and as we've seen this season, Terry Matalas is willing to throw most of that out. Go, if you watch it, you watch it. Great. That's absolutely fine. You won't need most of that now.
Exactly.
To look at this season. So, that I think it would be even tougher if you're trying to squeeze back in the Borg into this season of the show.
We've done our Borg bit. We've done our Borg.
So are they trying to clone Picard to turn him into some type of changeling like Locutus to be a member of them? I think it's kind of like that, but only next week will tell. You're right. The cliffhangers are a little bit confusing because we don't know what's going to happen, but exciting to find out what's going to happen.
Back to old school, waiting a week to find out.
Love it. My favourite way of watching TV.
Yes. Thanks so much, Victor. Still over on Facebook, we have some feedback from Heather Wallace who had this to say. My favourite moment was seeing cynical Gruff Shaw, flustered and tongue-tied meeting Geordi. It was so adorable. The great thing about having Changeling in a series that features so many character reunions is that when your favourite are in conflict, like Geordi not instantly helping out, there's always a bit of you wondering if it's them or an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure Deanna is real, though. She had just the right blend of worry and exasperation of any wife of Will Riker's would surely have.
True. See?
Yep. Yeah, okay. I'm starting to see it more. Heather went on to say, Jack continues to annoy me. I don't know why he's so worried about a genetic brain disease. Changelings are after him, so chances are he won't even make it past the weekend. Harsh.
You could live 80 years with a brain disease or die by the weekend. Think about the weekend, Jack.
Yes. As soon as Raffi said the wrong data is on the manifest, I knew we'd be getting lore somehow. And since he was in the trailer, he's expected. So I thought it was a good way of throwing us all off the scent that Data himself would be back in some form too.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the Research Institute, is Daystrom collecting dead Enterprise captains? Like, they've had Kirk and Picard's bodies on ice. Finally, just going back to last week's episode, Kirk Acevedo's cameo has a real cool layer to it. He mentioned Sneed was his foster brother and is seeking vengeance for his death. Sneed was played by Aaron Stanford, who was James Cole in Terry Matalas's 12 Monkeys, and was the foster brother to Kirk Acevedo's character Ramsey. As well as all the amazing Star Trek cameos, I'm having fun picking up the 12 Monkey ones.
That is very cool. I like that.
I didn't catch that myself, but yeah. No, Kirk is he's a good actor. Anytime you get him in any of the shows, he's always fun.
Absolutely, yeah. But I love the idea that he's just even nodding to the fact that in the other show he was also his stepbrother, effectively.
Yeah.
Kind of cool. Or his foster brother. Sorry, great stuff, Heather. I love that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather.
So, do you think if we took a tour around Daystrom that we might see the body of Captain Archer in there somewhere as well?
100%.
Even though we've never seen Captain Archer die.
And Pike will be in there.
Pike was also an Enterprise captain. That's it. Yeah. Any other Enterprise captain missing?
We're going to find out that, like, for a second, well, technically Riker, he every now and again he became, like, so he had put his body in there.
So if he dies later on in the season, they're just going to come and stick him in Daystrom.
Well, yeah, like, put him on ice, stick him in a cooler, like, throw some beers in there, it'd be fine. But, of course, they're going to have him posed. It won't be, like, the normal dead body pose. It'll be posed as he's kind of Rikering over a chair.
Just in the middle of jumping over a chair. Yeah, excellent. Good stuff. Thanks, Heather. Finally, we have some feedback from Dr. Bob Phillips, who says, even as a very non-avid Star Trek viewer, I love the links to the past and the extensions into the future with this episode. From We're All Gonna Die to the deliberate crashing of scooters and the tongue-tied Starstruck Shaw. You could run a podisode entirely made of one-line pickups and discussions. As for the questions for the next 2 episodes that could reveal, is this Deanna real or changeling? Can positronic Data whistle? Can Seven keep resisting the flirty charms of Jack? Okay, we've answered the changeling one. We think Deanna is real. Yep. Can positronic Data whistle? I love that idea. That it was absolutely to do with his android body. That's why he wasn't able to whistle back in Farpoint. But now that he has a positronic body, maybe he can whistle. I like that.
He is a hybrid. He probably has saliva.
Yeah. And I did reach out to Dr. Bob on this because I was really interested that he picked up on Jack flirting with Seven in the episode. And all I could pick up with was Jack flirting with Sydney LaForge. So that's all I could think of, was that Jack is actually trying to get together with Sidney LaForge. You kind of hear Geordie saying, "Get away from my daughter." You have that little moment with him and Jack in the episode. Don't think you have a chance there. But
I just think he's a Picard.
interesting. I think
he's that flirty, charmy man. He's back Jean-Luc in his heyday.
I was wondering whether, that theory you had about they had Picard's body in Daystrom because they took his DNA to create Jack. Did they also take some DNA from the ultra flirty James T. Kirk? He's a mix of the two of them.
He is the epitome of all the you got some Pike in there. Literally, he is Enterprise.
Who's better, Kirk or Picard? Yeah. Jack Picard. He's a mix of both. But I was also saying maybe there's a bit of the reason why he's even more flirty than he would be is because he's just met his octogenarian dad, who's usually been single for most of his life. So maybe Jack's going, "Oh my god, I don't want to turn into him." So he's flirting with everything that walks.
Potentially. We'll see. But let's see who he flirts with next week on next week's episode.
Yes, we
because of he might flirt with Raffi, Worf. Who knows?
You never know.
Some random doctor in the thing who turns out to be his mother. No. But we'll see. Thank you so much, everyone. First of all, thank you, Dr. Bob, for your feedback. And thank you so much for everyone for your feedback. And don't forget, if you like this and you want to hear your feedback on our podcast, you can head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com and you can even leave us a voicemail and we'll put your dulcet tones alongside ours on the podcast. Or you can just send us some feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you stay subscribed to this podcast, and if you're enjoying what you hear, why not share it with your friends, because sharing the podcast is what, Derek?
It is, of course, sharing the love. Great stuff. Yes, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back next week with Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 7, excitingly called Dominion.
Ooh.
We'll also, of course, discuss your feedback of the show and give our next question in the 10 Forward pub quiz. So make sure you join us next week. We have one more week as well in a galaxy far, far away with our final episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch on Disney Plus. So looking forward to that. A couple more weeks left of Star Trek Picard, though. Stay with us.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. We will be back, as Derek said, next week. But for now, keep trekking. Watch those stars, and I think it's a star trekking across the universe boldly on the left. There's probably a sun, and on the right is like the Alpha Quadrant, then you got the Delta. Just keep trekking. Bye-bye for now, fellow trekkers.
Bye.